Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you all so very much for being here. We have had so much wonderful feedback from both the John Walker video and the first of the 2008 metric. I cannot thank you all enough for that. You guys are why I do this. You guys are just the best. And real quick, I didn't get a chance to do it in the first video because I had recorded it before I had finalized a lot of stuff with the opening. I want to go ahead and give a quick shout out to both Johnny Marvel, who designed the logo for the Phantom Correspondence, the original one, as well as the new graphic that happens right at the beginning of this video. And we're going to go ahead and put that link in the description. Hit that up. He's on Instagram. He's great. Check out some of his work. You're going to love it. Especially if you like the stuff I'm talking about, you're going to love it. Also, you might be hearing a fantastic guitar solo happening while you're listening to that graphic. And that's from Corduroy Orbison, and they are a fantastic band. Their description is also going to be in their description. Good Lord. Their link is also going to be in the description, and definitely check them out. You're going to have that full song, and then also they have a bunch of other songs on their YouTube page as well. So definitely want to check them out. I just love showing support for two of my favorite local artists. And an actual artist and bands as well. So, anyways, yeah, check them out. They're great. And we're going to get right into it now. So in the first one of the 2008 metric, I discussed basically how, because of 2008, the year, every film that came before it is a little bit better because we didn't really know what we were doing yet. And every film after it is a little bit worse, arguably, because we should know better by now, effectively. That's what the 2008 metric basically is. But why does it change in 2008? You may be wondering. Well, if you're like me and you pay attention to years that films come out or different things like that, then you would know that 2008 is when the game changed entirely. And that's because of two very important movies. We're going to be covering both of those today. First off, we're going to go ahead and touch on the DC aspect of it, mainly because I was a little rough on DC in the last one. I will admit that. For those of you who don't know, I love DC Comics. I love Wonder Woman. I have been called a Marvel fanboy before because I have complained about the DC films. Wonder Woman is pretty much the main one that I really don't have a whole lot of issues with. But yeah, being called a Marvel fanboy, though, or like a Disney fanboy even more so, there's got to be a way to explain it properly. Is it really my fault that half of what I love was bought by the mouse, and the other half of what I love was given to who I consider to be a supreme cynic? Moving on. Like I said, we're going to be starting off with the DC entry in this. And in this one, it is, you might have guessed it, The Dark Knight. If you haven't seen The Dark Knight in a while, I highly suggest going back and watching it because it's genuinely one of the best films I've ever seen. That's not hyperbole. That's not just, it's a great superhero movie. It's one of the best films I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've seen a lot of movies in my life. But there's, the question of why. What makes it so good? I mean, honestly, I could tell you just, if you've seen it, then you already know. I could just be like, The Dark Knight. And then just, all right, guys, later, and then leave. But I'm not going to, because I want to explain to you why this movie is so good, at least why I think it is so good. So first off, we can't talk about it without talking about the cast. And yes, Heath Ledger is very clearly the standout in this. Unfortunately, his death meant that we didn't necessarily really get the completion of the original trilogy that they had planned, or really the completion of his story arc as the Joker. But all the same, you would be hard-pressed to find someone who does not enjoy his performance in this movie, and honestly, in my time, I think I've only met like one person who ever disagreed with me on that. But also, although I do want to focus on Heath, I think we keep forgetting something that really happens throughout the rest of this movie, and that is that there's like 6 major characters that are never fighting for screen time. And that's not even including like the mobsters, the extra GCPD characters, um, the news anchor slash the other Wayne Enterprise guy, who is trying to reveal who Bruce Wayne actually is. Which is a really kind of fun subplot and really works really well with the story arc of the Joker basically attacking Gotham as a whole. But the thing is that, like I said, those six characters, like when we really like, let's count them off. Okay, Batman, Lucius Fox, Alfred, Rachel Dawes, Harvey Dent, the Joker. Those are six major characters that all have, in my opinion, oh my gosh, it's seven. Commissioner Gordon. Seven major characters. Think about that. There's so many good characters in this. I actually forgot one of the main ones. None of them are ever fighting for screen time. And the thing is that those seven all have very complete arcs, which is very difficult to do for a 2.5 hour movie, especially one where you have such, I wouldn't even say bombastic, but I would say larger than life figures as Batman and the Joker. It would be very clear and very easy to focus just on those two and then let everyone else go to the wayside. And there's a certain way that he goes about doing that, that Christopher Nolan goes about doing that, excuse me. So I want you to go ahead and think about The Dark Knight. Think about the story structure of it, from beginning with the bank heist all the way up to there are two boats, each one has the trigger for the other one. Okay? Think about that for a second. Just go ahead. Okay. Now, after that, think about pretty much any other movie, even a superhero movie, even some of the MCU ones, which are really good. Think about them. Just real quick. Okay. How many of them would you say have what I would call wasted scenes? I would argue that a lot of movies have what I would consider wasted scenes. Like small, like even 5 to 10 second scenes where nothing consequential happens. It's just a random like panning shot of a road or something like that. And a lot of times these are used for developing the area and the story. However, Nolan does that, but not as much as you might think. Every single scene acts like railroad tracks in front of a locomotive. It is going steady, and it's not going to stop. It is going to get you to the scene where he is on the bat cycle. And this is how he rides the bat cycle, by the way. It's going to get you there. That's what The Dark Knight does. I know that might seem like such a small thing, but when you really start paying attention to certain films and how they do certain things, you would be hard-pressed to find a better example of this method than Nolan. Particularly in The Dark Knight. Some of his other films, I will admit, fall a bit flatter than others. I think his best film is this and The Prestige. Both of those are absolutely fantastic. But pretty much every other one that he has done, besides Batman Begins, there can be complaints, and most of them are warranted. Do I like most of those other movies? Yes, I really enjoy Christopher Nolan as a director. But I get where some of his flaws as a director and as a writer come in. So I get it. Everyone has moments, and everyone has things. And honestly, if you're still considered to be one of the better directors in Hollywood, which he is, why change things up? What The Dark Knight truly does, though, something that a lot of people didn't really notice until this moment, and really what Batman Begins does as well, is that it takes itself seriously. Now, you might be thinking that serious means dark. It does not. Taking your film seriously does not mean that the entire film has to be serious. You can still have a few joking moments. Dark Knight, I think, balances this very well. But there's never a point where Batman is seen as doing something silly or something that doesn't really make sense in the real world kind of aspect. And there's never really a point to try and make him this perfect, gritty, realistic version. It's just Batman, and it's their version of Batman. So no, we're not going to have the bat nipples or the close up shots of him, getting ready, and then it focuses on his butt or anything else like that. We're not going to do that in this version. However, we're also not going to have him run around and shoot every gun imaginable for some reason. But with the Dark Knight taking itself seriously, the rest of the superhero films following it were also allowed to take themselves seriously. And it's kind of clear to see the ones that didn't, which we'll be getting to more in the third part. However, before we proceed on to the third part, what about Marvel? So this movie actually came out 2 months before The Dark Knight. It's really weird to think about of two films being so important to both of their universes coming out within a 2 month span of each other. It's really weird to think about. Particularly in hindsight now, it's really weird to think about. But back then, it was just, oh, Batman movie's coming out, and okay, an Iron Man movie. That's weird. Think about that for a second. In 2008, it was like, oh, okay, I guess they're finally doing an Iron Man movie. Okay, sure, whatever. There was no MCU yet. There was no Robert Downey Jr. is King yet. At this point, this was a movie where they were taking a chance with who was then considered kind of a lesser known hero by average people, and really kind of a lesser known actor to particularly most people in my generation. You gotta think, I was born in 94. I really wasn't watching any Robert Downey Jr.'s movies before Iron Man. That was the first time I really had ever seen him in anything. And that's kind of the thing, is like both of those, both the actor and the character skyrocketed because of this movie. And everything that's really happened in both the MCU and the comics since then has really been affected by how successful Iron Man was. Now, some of you might have thought that I was being really weird when I said a lesser known character. That's true. If I said that today, like just and meant it, just, oh yeah, shut the video off. I mean, for the past 13 years, Iron Man has been on every screen, every page, everything. Iron Man has been Marvel for the last 13 years. But when you really think about it before that, not many people would know who he was. They might have seen like a picture of him or something like that, and like, okay, I know he's one of the Marvel guys, but no one's really going to know who Iron Man is, what his story is, and how he connects to the Marvel Universe as a whole. Back then, the average person knew who really Superman, Batman, X-Men, and Spider-Man. Those were kind of the four that average people would know. People who didn't read comics, people who were just like, oh yeah, I know the movies, or the cartoons, growing up in the 90s. Because that's what we had, is we had Batman, Superman, X-Men, Spider-Man. Those were the four. Just, it's the circle. It just keeps going, And I know that for some of you, especially if I have any younger viewers watching this, that's a weird world to think of. And let me tell you, that's true. It was weird because you would read these comics, you'd be like, oh, there's so many other characters that are just so cool and so interesting. You got to think at this one. I mean, even as a Captain America fan, this was a world without a Captain America movie. That was weird to me and sad. But yeah, I mean, that's what it was. And Iron Man changed all that. And Iron Man, the same way that Dark Knight changed it, it took itself seriously. It told a genuine origin story, put it in the modern world, but didn't change the heart of who the character was. And that's where Marvel gets it right. That's where the MCU understands very well. My brother actually coined a term. He said that I shouldn't be doing the 2008 metric. I should be doing what's called the Marvel metric, which is fair, and that could definitely be a part of it. Um, but the thing about the Marvel metric is, and where the Marvel method, excuse me, the Marvel method. The Marvel method is to take a character, take their base form, who they are, what makes them, and then build out from that. When you really start watching, Captain America is a really good example of this. Captain America and Iron Man both really are, because they start off as their very base characters, and then they build because of their sequels, because of the Avengers. Watching Iron Man 1 in 2008 and watching Captain America the First Avenger in 2011, and then fast forwarding to 2019 and watching Endgame, it is so interesting to see how those characters have changed over, at that point, like an 8-year difference or a 12-year difference, or 11-year difference, excuse me. That that's really kind of the interesting thing about the MCU, which we'll be going more into in the third one. I'll leave that for there. But Iron Man, of course, started that. If you don't have Iron Man, then you don't have the Avengers. And I think that in itself says a lot, both from the character standpoint and from the film standpoint. I love that everything branches out from him. I love that everything branches out from this. I love that this movie, when it comes right down to it, and really, when you really think about the stakes of like the following films, is kind of a low key film. Like, I know that sounds weird because it's Tony Stark, it's Iron Man, he's going crazy. But when you think about it, it's Tony gets taken, he builds a suit, he builds a better suit, he builds the best version of the suit, then that gets taken from him, or the first suit does technically, but anyway, it's a whole other thing. He finds out that one of his oldest mentors is actually working against him, and there's your movie. He has to take him down. And that's pretty much it. And they just, I don't know, they just do so well with so little, with such kind of a basic, it's kind of, like I said, like the Dark Knight in a way. They knew where they were going. They don't really have any wasted scenes in that movie. So it's just a steady pace. There might be a few, like scenes, like maybe you want to take out, oh goodness, I can't remember that actress's name. The lady who interviews him, and yeah, and things happen because he's Tony Stark. Maybe you want to take that out, but at the same time, you kind of have to clarify who Tony Stark is at that point, because he's very, very different in later films, obviously, because he wants to just be with Pepper. But at this point, he is 100% a womanizer, and there's no way around it. He hasn't grown yet. And that's really the key to this one. Whereas Dark Knight works really well with an ensemble, Iron Man really, really hinges on Robert Downey Jr. just nailing the performance of Tony Stark, which we all know he does. And that's nothing against Jeff Bridges, Gwyneth Paltrow, that one guy who gets replaced by Don Cheadle later. I know who Terrence Howard is. Yes, Terrence Howard does a fine job in this. I just like Don Cheadle better. Maybe it's just because I actually got to see him as War Machine. I got to see him in other movies. But yeah. Anyways, it's nothing to say against any of the other characters. But this is very clearly an Iron Man movie, and it's very clearly Robert Downey Jr.'s movie. So, but anyways, yeah. Dark Knight and Iron Man. I mean, I don't really know what else to say about them. I know I just kind of rambling because I'm doing this without a script, because I just love these movies, and I just knew that I could kind of talk about them just randomly with you all without really focusing on anything. The next one, though, I will have a script. Definitely have a script on the next one. In fact, I might split it into 2 parts. Because here's the thing. Whereas 2008 is definitely, like, this video is going to be the shortest of them, and it is the catalyst for everything, what happens from here on out is absolutely insane. Because honestly, I'm about to summarize roughly 35 to 40 superhero films in the next video alone. So I'm probably going to have to cut it into 2 videos. And I'm probably going to go studio by studio. Because, like I said, everything hinged on this year, and everything that happened following it happened because of this year, 2008. And the following 4 studios all were affected. That's Marvel Studios, which wasn't even a thing just yet, but give it time. Warner Brothers Studios, handling DC. Fox, 20th Century Fox, which had the X-Men films. And Sony, which had the Spider-Man films. All 4 of these companies have very, very interesting storylines from here. And yeah, I really can't wait to get to them. And that's going to be in the next video. And after that, I've got a couple other things planned out for you all. I know that I'm going to be doing a Star Wars one after this series before I get into my next series. It's going to give me an extra week to kind of, because my next series is going to be pretty big too. And I want to get into that. And I don't want to give anything away. However, if you are on Patreon, our Patreon, you could have had a chance into voting what our next series will be. Don't worry. It's not too late. You can vote on what the next series after that one will be. We do polls at the end of every month, talking about the different videos that we're going to be recording, different podcasts we'll be recording. We're not going to be doing the podcast votes until after this summer because we have a whole big event this summer called the Summer of Video Games. If you haven't been listening to our podcast, it will also be in the description. It is on iTunes and Spotify. We're talking all about different video games this summer. That's our big thing. The articles on the website are going to be about video games. Most of what we're going to be doing is about video games this summer. So, yeah. In the meantime, though, I'll be talking about comics and movies and things on here on our wonderful YouTube channel, which, once again, thank you all so much for being here and subscribing and maybe even leaving a like. Maybe a like and a comment, helping me out with the algorithm. I'd really appreciate it. It'd be great. I do this little dance if you do it, you know. And actually, this dance is just kind of free, you know. You might get a different dance if you do it. Oh, who knows? Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a good day. We'll see y'all next time.